All right. Again, welcome everyone to the Series 3 of our USPS Beginner to Payroll training. We appreciate that you've been on our first couple. And again, if you haven't, we do have those recordings out on our fiscal page on our YouTube channel. So as promised, we are going to get into processing our payroll, right? The real meat and potatoes of it. So to do that, there are obviously several things that go into that. There's our preparation, right? Setting up any new contracts, making adjustments to any compensations that we need along the way. Maybe somebody's brought to you, they went up in degrees, so you've got to go change their pay. There's a couple ways of doing that. You can either do it through new contract, mid-year change, or you can go right into their compensation. Payroll items, maybe somebody starting an annuity, stopping one, you're doing error adjustments. There's all that pre-payroll planning, right? And then even once you initialize your payroll or start your payroll, there's still some cleanup to do, okay? So what we're going to focus on with payroll processing is actually within the payroll tab itself, okay? So let's cover these items for you. I'm going to talk about future, then we're going to come back to current, okay? So payroll payments future, assuming most of you have already at least used this once, okay? We may have some folks on here that have never used it at all, but basically using payroll payments future is a way to go and put out all of your exceptions, your timesheets, maybe you're doing supplementals, bonuses, overtime, miscellaneous, and maybe that's how you pay some of your regular employees, right? Maybe you have some non-contract people, but you pay them on a reg transaction type, okay? So let's go into future, okay? If you're using future, when you initialize, everything from future moves over to current, okay? So I'm going to try to give you as much breadcrumb trail as possible, okay? So everything stays in future until you initialize, okay? Now let's say you initialize and you delete, okay, that payroll. As long as you don't delete payroll and exceptions, it keeps all of those transactions for you, okay? When you use future, if you're running any reports or everything like that, and they're a future pay report or you're running them out of grid, those reports are based on information being in this workspace, okay? So if you go initialize payroll and go try to run a future pay report, you're not going to get any data, right? Because the source of that information is this area here, future pay, okay? So future pay. So you'll see that we have this wonderful grid here, the wonderful opportunity to run a report here, and the opportunity to pull in more. Okay, going to take a brief moment to just touch on this more area. If you've been on any of our trainings, I kind of had to wrap my head around the more area as a file cabinet. Okay, this is how I like to look at it. I am within the future pay amount. Okay, so that is my file cabinet. And these carrots, they're called carrots here, these little carrots that open and close, those would be my drawers in the file cabinet. And then everything that I might have filed under compensation is going to be below that. So hopefully that little analogy helps you a little bit more in grasping this concept of the more area, okay? So within this, I'm looking at the compensation piece and then more relatively anything under position that's related to that specific compensation, okay? Future pay amount. The information I might want to see pulled in is a description, my pay type, effective date. I use that just because I typically don't want an effective date in there because we're going to talk about date pieces here in a bit. Maybe I want applies for retirement, my retire hours, did I mark it as supplemental, and supplemental tax option. Why would I don't want to say clutter my grid, but I might want those on a report that I pulled out, right? If I'm wanting to save and capture everything that I entered at that time, that's a great way to do that, okay? pay amounts themselves, you can pull in units if you wish, okay? Position pay, okay? You can go and pull in position number. If I recall, oh, that's not where I found it. Yep, pay group, it is. So how many of you ever tried to find pay group in the future pay amount? Okay, here's where you can find that. Okay, so in there, it's going to be under position pay. Then you go under position, and here is pay group right here, and then you click code. So I don't know if some of you want to grab a screenshot of that to remember that breadcrumb trail, but that is how you find pay group in here, which is fabulous in and of the fact if, let's say, you're going to go run a report and you just want to balance certain pay groups, right? Why is that beneficial? I was just assisting a district this week who was kind of looking for a way to balance, you know, again, she got handed a job that somebody was doing before her. Okay, that's all right. We don't know what we don't know. But she's like, how can I tie these future amounts on my pay report back to actually what I did in future? Well, if you think about your pay report, it's broken out by pay group, right? It's those two columns, current and future. Well, if you come in here and you filter or sort by a pay group, you could run a report in PDF and it's going to give you those totals, right? There you have other report options that you can total as well. But then that you can use to tie to your pay report. Okay, so hopefully that gives someone a little extra support in running it. Let's say you don't want to run it by pay group. Okay, I'm going to go grab my pay group code. And again, I don't have anything in here yet. I'm going to show you how to do that. But even if you, let's say you have everybody in the pool, okay, all your exceptions, timesheets, stipends, supplementals, what have you, overtime. You come in here and you could run this as, see this little button down at the bottom, this little tiny arrow. You could run it as Excel data, Excel field names, doesn't matter, okay? And then you could put your own subtotals in. That way you have a grand total for your future, or you could subtotal it by pay group, okay? All right, so let's go create one. All right, so when we go in, obviously the first thing it's going to ask you is the employee's name. So I'm going to pick on Daisy, okay? I want to show you some things here. I was talking to a veteran payroll person the other day, and it was the first time, and that's okay. It was the first time she had ever realized this NC and this C. NC stands for non-contract. C stands for contract, okay? So that might be a huge epiphany for you today, right? You're like, oh my gosh, I don't think I ever noticed that. That's okay. That's all right. But here's some other tips and tricks that we've given you along the way. If you're still seeing a lot of clutter in your compensation dropdown, you're still seeing last year's or maybe even the year before's people, wink, wink, okay? Now's the time to do that EMIS checklist piece about mass changing old compensation records to archive, okay? When you archive, old compensations, they will be removed from your grid, so get rid of the noise, and they remove from your drop downs, so that can get rid of the noise. If you've not done a mass change before, and you would like us to help you walk you through that, we are more than happy to do that. More than happy to do that. Just send us a ticket and we'll get you on the list and we'll walk you through that. Okay?
Heidi, that's what next month's roundtable is going to be for.
That's
We're going
right.
to show them how to mass change compensations.
That's right. So next month, don't miss October's USPS roundtable. We have good stuff going on for that. So we have two things. Jason's going to talk about the EMIS checklist and review that, and Miss Ange is going to show you kind of the 5 steps on how to do a mass change, okay? So again, don't miss October's roundtable. It'll be recorded, but don't miss it. It's going to be full of good stuff. Thank you, Miss Ange. I appreciate that plug, my friend. All right, so in here, you'll notice that my Daisy Duck has a secretary position, And I put in FY23. If you got to listen to our new contract training that we did this year, we recommended districts put in FY23 in front of their description and in front of their label when they did new contracts. Here's why that becomes so helpful right here, right? Because when you come in here and you have multiple ones, especially this time of year, you're like, which one is it, right? So this is going to help you tremendously, all right? So that's how to know what is a non-contract compensation and a contract compensation. All right, so I'm going to pick on her sub-aide position. Now, I know this says fiscal 21. Bear with me. I have old demo files, and we are a couple years behind the times here. It's still up to date as far as the features, but we're just a year behind, okay? You're going to give a description, okay? And then you're going to choose your pay type, okay? Typically, when we are in here, most of the time we're all doing miscellaneous, right? But we are coming upon, I know, hard to believe, we are going to be coming upon calendar year end. I know, nobody throw tomatoes, right? It's coming whether we like it or not. We want you to know this is where you're going to go enter your NC1 or your life insurance. In fact, this is where we recommend you do this, okay? Because if you don't get it done here, you can still do it to get it on their W-2s, but it could be anywhere from a 3 to 4 step process in core adjustment, okay? So again, miscellaneous can be used in here. That's going to be for your like timesheet stuff, that type of stuff. Life insurance premium, that's going to be your NC1. That's life insurance that your district might offer over $50,000, okay? Doc, okay? Doc payments are done in here. When it comes to doc and regular, and I think it's irregular, those all impact contract amounts. So be very, very careful when using doc, irregular, or regular, okay? And then of course you have some you have your NC1, your NC2s and 3s, and then your overtime, okay, and shift premiums, okay? So for Daisy, I'm keeping it simple. We're going to do miscellaneous. Let's talk about effective date. 95.5 rule. 95% of the time you are not going to use this. This effective date is used if you want to schedule future payments, okay? The definition of this effective date is not your pay date. It is your pay date range, okay? When we initialize payroll for a pay group, it gives a beginning and ending date, which creates like a claw to look back at several things. One, it looks back to see what's in future pay. And two, it looks back on the compensation to see if there are any days on the calendar for that compensation for that, and it pulls them in, okay? So again, you are going to want to be very careful if using effective date, right? Units, pretty easy, okay? Let's say I'm going to do 10 units for Miss Daisy. The rate, you can either add in a rate, or if you leave this blank, it will pull in the rate that's sitting on the compensation record at that time, okay? So just to let you know, it'll either, if you leave it blank, it'll pull it in, or you can override it, okay? To that note, let's say you have a bunch of subs out there, sub-aides, and you've got them in their own pay group or whatever, sub-bus drivers, all those kind of folks, okay, sub-teachers. There is an extract and import that you can do to update those rates if you'd like to. So if you would like more information on that, just tap us and we'll get you that information, okay? So again, this is it's a blacked out area or grayed out area that's gonna update the gross when we save it. Does this amount that we're paying them apply for retirement? This indeed does. Retire hours, okay? We're not gonna assume that they're not daily, so we're gonna add that in. This is not a supplemental payment. Excuse me, so we are not going to flag that, and we're going to tax this as normal. You'll notice it does let us know what pay group that this position, so position 20, is a part of the sub pay group, okay? Again, pay groups are tied to positions. okay? Calendars are tied to compensation records. Now, if I needed to change or add, let's say it's a brand new job, or this aide actually was maybe working in a Title I area this time, and I knew that I already didn't have that on the employee's payroll accounts, I could pull in and add a new expenditure account or a new payroll account, okay? So right now, this employee only has this account for them set up. For this purpose, I'm just going to leave it. I would not pay a sub-aide out of athletics potentially, but so you could add that here, okay? You could change it. You could add multiples, okay? Once you have this saved, okay, I'm just going to go back and let it pull in the original. The only time you need to add, again, is if you are not using the original or they have several originals and you want to select which one, okay? Now, when we come up to the save area, you'll notice there are two options. There's create new and close. If I keep create new and save, it's just going to open up a brand new record for me to enter my next person, okay? If I uncheck that and close, when I save it, it's automatically just going to close this window for me, okay? So typically you're doing a person at a time, and you would just do this. It'll bring up the same person. You might need to change it or what have you, okay? If you'll notice, there's my Daisy Duck, okay? She got brought in. I could then run a report, okay, again, filtered on her pay group or what have you, and pull that in and do balancing, okay? All right. There is another way to bring items into future, okay? Actually, there's two other ways. If you ever use the USP import in Classic, or that's what was handed to you as a new user doing redesign, that is done. There's options on there to just do attendance and absences, and there's an option with certain columns on that to add future entries, okay? So that is done under the attendance absence import, okay? You would bring that in. We do have those templates available if that's something you're interested in. Here recently, we've had several requests for a mass load into future pay amounts, okay? This time of year has been, people have been ratifying contracts. We've assisted people with bonuses. We've assisted with retros to non-contract folks, those types of deals. So you can actually use the mass load for that. And when you use mass load and you have your file ready, you would choose the option called future pay amount. Okay, that would be the entity that you would use. Okay, there is a chapter out in the SSDT wiki or the documentation. To get to your documentation super quick, we go to help, documentation, and then we're going to click on the manual. It takes you right to USPS. Doesn't take you to the home page. You don't have to finagle your way around. Just takes you right there. And then you can go grab the information under utilities. You go down to mass load, and you would go specifically to the area called future pay amount, okay? There are criteria for adding items, and then if you needed to update items, okay? All right. Go back to payroll future. Okay? You can add absolutely multiple items in here, all right? Any questions on the future pay amount area? Any questions? Okay, there is a future pay report. Did they leave it here? Nope, it's back on the, so if you go to the home page and you scroll down right here, future pay amount report. I know that there are several districts that we've created, I think you can actually find it out on the public wiki now on the shared reports, but there's a future pay report. You can actually pull in only certain pay groups. So if that's something you're interested in, you can find it out in the public documents, or you can ask us and we can help you to get that into your USPS application. Again, this is all to assist in balancing, okay? The next piece we're going to cover is current. Current is different, okay? Current is used when, current is when you initialize payroll, future items are moved over. Also, in current, when you initialize, all of your contract compensations that fall within your payroll date will come in here, okay? So this is how everything is pulled in for your contract compensations, okay? Again, that is pulled in when you initialize. You can also use current when doing a special pay. Right now, special pays, when you initialize the payroll and do special pay, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, you can only add items in current. Right now, there is not a load into current. That is definitely an enhancement request that has been put up to the SSDT. If that is something you would like to see, you guys are our voice, okay? So if you would like to see that enhancement of a load into the current area, please send us a ticket stating that. We can then use that as power to up the ante for that enhancement to move up the food chain, okay? All right, within this area, and after we initialize, we're going to come back in and show you this. Once I have items sitting in current, okay, then I can actually run a pay report on certain individuals, okay? So that's a pretty cool feature, all right? So again, this is going to tell you, warning, there are no in-progress payrolls. So if I go try to create somebody, I can't, okay? Because I have to pick a payroll first. So you can't enter items into current unless you have initialized a payroll, okay? All right, any questions on current so far? Once we initialize, it may start making a little more sense. All right, so let's go into payroll processing, all right? So within our payroll processing area, this description item, hopefully districts have found incredibly helpful. It definitely aids us in knowing what was a special pay, what wasn't a special pay, if we are doing such a thing. It also lists out the pay plan that we used, the pay cycle we used, when we ran that payroll, did we suppress voluntary deductions? We do have some districts out there that run regular payrolls, not flagged as special pay, but suppress voluntary deductions. A lot of the times it could be for supplementals, okay? And then to get into your payroll workspace, you have this detail area, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and initialize a payroll. Again, if anyone has any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to ask, okay? I'm going to name mine test, and this is going to be my 430 payroll, okay? My pay plan is biweekly in my account. My pay cycle is going to be a second of a 2-pay month. My start date, okay, so start date, let's talk about this. This start date is, the start date and stop date are what I jokingly call the claw, right? That's my range that is going out and looking at anything that you may have done as surge retirement days and core and adjustments. If you've done any adjustment days to attendance, okay, this is looking at attendance and absence records. And this is looking at compensation start and stop date, okay? So it's pulling anything into the pool that meets that criteria. It's also going to look at those future items that don't have an effective date, or if they have an effective date, it's going to look for any effective date within this range. So for example, I'm going to do 04/01/2021. Oh, my bad. I am not going to do that. Sorry, 15/2021, okay? And then I can be trained, really. And then my ending date of 04/30/2021, okay? My pay date is 04/30/2021. Okay, so let's talk about this first. So my pay period covers 4/16 to 4/30, okay? So that's going to go back and look at anything in core adjustments that I have a transaction date on that applies to payroll. Maybe you're doing like CSRS retirement days for supplementals, that type of thing, adjustment. It's going to look at attendance and absence records. It's going to look at compensation start and stop dates that fall within that range, okay? And again, it's going to look at anything you have in future that either has an effective date that falls between the 16th and the 30th or no effective date. If I had an item out in future and it was dated May 1st, is that going to bring that into this payroll? No, because it does not fall within that period, okay? So talking about future again, you could actually go out and schedule, let's say, supplementals, right? Let's say you've already paid the first half of fall supplementals and the second half comes in November. You could go ahead and schedule those out there, look at the pay that you're doing, the range that you're paying that or the period, and go ahead and schedule those out there to save yourself some time later on, okay? Suppressing voluntary deductions. This is going to be a normal payroll. We're not going to do that. Most of the time when this is done is if you have a special pay that you're running or in certain void type situations and you've already withheld the deductions, or let's say you've already paid an employee, but you forgot to give them a timesheet, right? And so if you needed to do a special pay to just pay this person's timesheet, you would suppress voluntary deductions because they've already come out on their regular pay. To ignore direct deposit is to do just that. If they were flagged as direct deposit, this is going to then cut them a check if flagged, okay? And is this a special pay? I want you to note something. I'm going to do a regular pay, but if I click special pay, watch what happens to my available pay groups. It says not today, okay? So that says none of those are going to be coming into my payroll that I need to manually update and do that. Maybe we will do a special training on just how to do a special pay. I'll make note of that. Maybe we can add that to our training repertoire. All right. Now, so we've got our regular pay set up. Okay. So what's the next thing we do, right? We pull in the pay groups that we want to use. So if you've ever been on a training that we've done, or especially one that I've done, I love to use this add date range. It seriously can be your best friend, especially through the summer months, because it helps you tremendously in not having to make adjustments to days in ESRS, because no one likes to do that, okay? Truth be told. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull in all of my pay groups. So if you're not sure how to do it all, pull them all in. I left click on the top one. I scroll down to the bottom. I click shift and left click to the bottom to select them all. And I'm going to bring them all into the pool. Okay. Well, there is one pay group that I do not want in the pool, and it is my pay group 10. I'm going to pull them out for now. Okay. Here's why. The individuals that are in this pay group, their compensation start date is March 31st. Okay. They were late hires, but I'm sorry, they're late pays. They got, they started those days, but look where everybody else is at, right? Everybody else is caught up. If I were to include them over here with everybody else, are they going to get all of their service days from the first day on their job calendar up to April 15th? They are not. Okay. So this is how we can do them. Again, these folks in this pay group have a compensation start date of March 31st. Okay. So now what I can do is to make sure that they get all of their days recorded, I'm going to use this add date range. Again, this does not change anything with their pay. I promise. Absolutely. Is it helping you? Absolutely. Because it is not only going to get their service days right, it's going to update the days worked on your compensation record. So if you think about a compensation record, that days worked is grayed out, right? Where does that come from? It comes from your date range in payroll. So again, days worked is calculated or brought in from your payroll period, okay? What also does that days worked use for calculation? It's used on the compensation to calculate your earned amount. So it is incredibly important that your days worked are right. If I were to skip this and they didn't get all their service days brought in or their days worked, and I go to look at their compensation, their days worked would be wrong and their earned amount would be wrong, okay? So that's why it's incredibly important to get everybody in the pool when we should. So for this, I'm going to use 03/31/2021 and an ending date like everyone else. Okay, I'm gonna catch them up. That way on my next payroll, I don't have to worry about fussing with them, right? So I'm gonna do 04/30/2021, okay? And then I'm gonna bring that pay group into this area. Now, many of you that I've spoken to out there are doing two groups anyway. They're doing your contracted employees, and then you're doing an add date range for maybe your timesheet people, right? Which is your sub aides, cooks, bus drivers, teachers, all of that kind of stuff. You can have many add date ranges to meet what you need, okay? So typically timesheets are a couple weeks in arrears just to give you time to do it. All right, any questions on that so far? Seeing none? Okay, all right, let's initialize our payroll. Okay, again, when we initialize our payroll, it's, well, for Classic, it was doing two things. It's initializing and doing calc pay. But what it's doing in redesign, it's doing all of it together. It's like bringing everybody into the pool. It's looking at anything that I have out in future. It's looking back to all of the contract compensations, those that have money still due, okay, and that are flagged money still due, pay still to be paid, and marked yes as stretch pay, okay? Those three criteria: money still due, pays to be paid, and marked as stretch pay, okay? So I now have my payroll. I'm now sitting in my payroll workspace, okay? If you've never noticed this button before, this is kind of your back button, takes you right back to the payroll listing if you want. We always recommend verify your dates right now. We all get in a hurry, all of us, and all of us are incredibly busy, okay? Take 2 hot seconds to check your dates here, okay? All right. Then, because say I use the wrong date over here, you catch it now, that's fabulous. You can delete your payroll, okay, and start initialization all over with the right date, okay? All right, so remember that I did my date range of the 16th to the 30th, but then I have my pay group 10, right, that I treated special. I want you to notice on the right-hand side, they are special. I've got a date range from 3/31 to 4/30, okay? So that is going to look back at their calendar and make sure that days worked, service days, all of that jazz gets updated, okay? Now, nobody gets away with no errors typically, right? So always look for an error report. Even if you have a green light, I cannot emphasize this enough. Even if you have a green light, check for an error report, okay? We're going to take a peek at that error report. Oops, came over here. Can you all see that error report now? Yes, thank you. Okay, so let's blow it up a little bit. All right, so how do we know what to determine is something to address and not address, right? Well, I am going to give you guys a link that is going to be your bestest friend, okay? This link in the chat box points you directly to the SSDT's warnings and errors page, okay? So go ahead and grab that, okay? If not, you miss it, you don't have your chat box open or whatever, let us know and we'll make sure to get that to you, okay? That is going to list you all the warnings and errors. If you ever see, even though this is a warning, these down here, no external ID, do not ignore that, okay? This is a warning that should not be ignored, okay? When it says no external ID, because basically this just means you need to address these pay accounts, okay? Okay, and what's it telling me? Right here, it's telling me, sync it. Okay, go sync it. Maybe you forgot to sync your accounts. And that is something that I'll review with you, okay, is syncing accounts. So typically it's done for every district at 4 o'clock in the morning. This time of year, it's into September, you might still be getting grant accounts added in the USAF side of the house. So you may still need to be doing some of those synchronizations, okay? And then this is just letting you know for this employee that the max amount has been reached. Okay, so that's okay. But anytime you have anything with a payroll account, do not ignore that. Okay, if you have trouble finding what the issue is, you let us know and we will help you. Okay, all right. I'm gonna minimize that for now. All right. Is there a way to make the air report list names and not their IDs? We can definitely send that up, Lori, as an enhancement request. So if you would send that along to us in a ticket, we'll send that up. Just state that on the, you have sent it up already. Oh, thank you, Elisa. I appreciate it. Yeah, so did you send that up for Lori, Elisa, or was it for somebody else? Okay, okay.
Sorry about that. I couldn't take myself off mute. I can't remember. I think it's probably Lori. I did have a question recently and I did send it up. Yeah, so it is an existing enhancement request.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for both of you. I appreciate that. Thanks for asking the question as well. Okay, so absolutely. Yes, yeah, I agree, right? New contracts, absolutely. We got to love that. All right. So make sure that you do address and look at it again, even if that is green, okay? Let's say you needed to make modifications. Again, you're just walking through your payroll process. Now, this is where I wanted to take a pause and let you know, we told you about those payroll checklists that are out there. Today's training, I'm not following either checklist specifically because I know everybody has moved theirs around a little bit. So if I do that, I don't want any confusion. So I just want to let everyone know we're walking through the steps of payroll, okay? So if you have rearranged your checklist and you're working with that, that's fine. If you're getting by with that, it's all good, okay? There are recommendations. The ones that we have out on our website are recommendations, but there are some things you can move around. We do ask that you ask us if you're going to move some things around on that checklist because there may be things that you may be unaware of that might impact something else, okay? All right, so let's say you needed to go add a compensation record for someone. Let's say you needed to go update a compensation record for someone, or you updated payroll items. Honestly, I have found different scenarios, different ways. This modify button to me still is elusive sometimes to changes that are made. So I always say free insurance. If you make any changes and once you run the pay report, it doesn't automatically update that for you, come in, do modify payroll. If you're not familiar with modified payroll just says, okay, I made changes to pay group 10. Or I made changes to several pay groups. I can't remember which. I'm going to select them all, okay? Or let's say, crud, I accidentally brought pay group in 10 with everybody else, right? Let's assume Heidi did not bring them in with the 331 to the 430 date. Has anybody ever noticed this column right here called delete? Okay, this basically kicks that pay group out of the pool. Okay, so I want to show you this. I'm going to, and that probably terrifies everyone, but I'm going to kick pay group 10 out of the pool. Okay, and look, they're gone. Okay, now to get out of this, I can either click update payroll. I'm just going to select it all. I have a small district. I'm just going to go ahead and let it run through its process. And who doesn't like green lights, right? So when this is done, I still need to bring pay group 10 back in, right? So whether I do this when I first initialize, or I can do this after I've initialized, or in a situation like this, you catch yourself, there's all kinds of forgiveness here, all kinds of grace given during payroll, okay? So when this gets done validating, there's an option called Add Pay Group. So right here, I'm going to go in, there's my group. I'm going to give it the right days. And I'm going to add that group back in. And it's going to validate again, okay? Because not only is it just bringing that group in, but it's updating all my reports, right? It's adding to my pay report. It's bringing them all in on my payroll item reports. It's bringing them all in on my budget distribution and pay account distribution reports, okay? All right. So at this point, you still have the option to delete the payroll and reinitialize. If you do delete payroll and exceptions, it will get rid of all of your exceptions. So be very careful with this one. I also want to bring your attention to this. Warning. This payroll includes charges to expenditure accounts that are inactive. So not only does it show me that on the error report, it tells me this right here. Don't ignore this. This will be a thorn in your side if you post payroll, okay? And it will let you post payroll, okay? So make sure you address this warning, okay? All right, so let's go look at our pay report. We're going to break down this pay report as quickly as we can, okay? So we have our start and stop dates for our main payroll, okay? This is our regular payroll information up here, okay? And then you'll notice my pay group 10, Bueller, where'd my pay group 10 go? I think it's by name, so my apologies, I'm going to miss that totally. There it is right here. Here at the bottom. See, there's my different date range. Okay, cool. Okay, now when I come down, I miss it. Nope. Okay. So I'm going to scroll to the bottom. Of course, you guys are all used to seeing a pay report, the items that are on there. If you weren't familiar with, you could always do a find, so that's your Control F key. I'm going to scroll down to our totals pages. There. Okay, so here's our report summary. Okay, this is going to tell us our pay date, our total gross, right? This should be what our payroll submission file equals. That's our gross payroll. That's the amount we're transferring from general fund to payroll fund. Okay, our total direct deposits, and we got somebody getting a check. Okay, so don't ignore that. Okay, tells you your total annuities if you're tracking that, and then here in our pay groups. Okay, remember how I told you about balancing your future totals to your future pay reports? This is where you can do that from. This is your contract peeps. This is your future. Remember, I had Daisy Duck in there. There's her $150. Okay, so then this should always match this, which is your gross. Okay, because it's the combination of all. Okay. If you had doc pay, that would show up here. Right now, I just have regular, accrued, and miscellaneous. And then, of course, you have your payroll item totals. And then down at the bottom, it's going to tell you your grand totals, ODJFS count, and how much you still have in the advance. By now, everybody should be out of the advance. Okay. Then we're just going to go left to right. The pay amount summary. Okay. This is like pay sum. You used to be able to run it from another report outside of here, but they brought it into the pool. So this is going to be everybody. This is going to be your future pay, your contract pay, all of that type of information. You can include subtotals by certain groups. So if you do that, it will then subtotal. And then you can actually also choose only to run this pay amount summary by certain groups. Okay, So if you wanted to do that. So let me just run it on a couple groups right now, just so it doesn't take forever to run. Okay, so it tells me what pay groups I chose. Okay, so if that's something that you save, sorry for the fast scroll. Had almost a full cup of coffee, so that's what we're dealing with. All right, so then it's going to total up pay for everyone and then give you a grand total for those pay groups. Okay. Next in line is the pay item detail. Okay, so this is just going to be all your payroll items detailed out. Okay, so let's say if I chose my federal, state, and maybe I just wanted to do Medicare on this one. Oops. Boy, my vision. Boy, that 0 looked like a 9. All right, and we're going to do this. Again, this is just going to give you an idea of what this report. It's going to tell me what payroll items. So again, you can do some pre-posting balancing here. Okay, pre-posting balancing. Let's say you made changes or somebody had additional withholdings you added, right? You could go check it out here. Okay, it's going to subtotal by payroll item. Okay, and there's my Medicare, and then it's going to give you some totals at the bottom. All right. Next across the line, this is going to be a summary, okay? So if you don't like all the details, right, then you get the summary, which is basically just going to be, here's how much each one is. Okay, so this one runs real quick. And this should match what? This should match your pay report, right? Right, we just looked at this stuff. So this is a cross-reference to this, okay? Like federal tax, 18,486. 18, I know you guys can't see that probably. 18,486. Okay, so those two reports, this payroll item summary is the breakout of your pay report totals at the bottom. Okay, those should always match. These two reports I want to bring huge attention to. Okay, for those that may be underusing these. How many of you, especially this time of year, are like, oh my gosh, something got charged to the wrong account? Did you know that there are preventative measures for that? These two reports are it. Okay, these are your meat and potatoes. So here's something that I'm going to suggest to you to add to your checklist. Okay, we could initialize and you could still be going and adding a bunch of timesheets and stuff like that. Okay, that's fine. Typically the timesheets are one you've already done. They're not going to impact like the payroll accounts that you have attached to contracts, right? So I'm talking those getting paid out of grant monies, athletic funds, general funds, that type of stuff, right? So when you initialize the bulk of your peeps that have the core pay accounts that usually you have problems with, that's where they come into play, right? If you initialize your payroll and you go right down here to these two reports, budget distribution and pay account distribution, and provide those one to either you, because maybe you're the one-man band, or to your treasurer or to your finance department and say, look this over and tell me if anything needs to be changed because I haven't posted payroll yet. That's the time to do it. That's the time to do it. So I like this one better, but in all fairness, I'm going to show you this one, okay? And ask your finance people, how do you want to see it? You can see it in PDF format or you can see it in Excel, okay? But you can do it by full account or fund or function or whatever, or maybe you want to do a special cost center. But for now, I'm just going to keep it easy, okay? Generate that report. This time of year, okay? Now, again, I'm in fiscal 21 files, but at this time of year, you shouldn't be paying anything probably out of special cost center that ends in 22, right? Because that would be last year's grant money, and you've got this year new earnings. So sorry for the free ticket to ride here. We're going to go down here. You can scroll up in specifically grant stuff, right? And again, I'm in 21. So if you see any 21 stuff in 23, there is a problem, okay? So you're going to want to make sure you're tapping somebody on this. But this is where you go address, see all these? This tells you, oh, crud, right? Somebody's not getting paid out of the right account. I don't want to have to change it, or I don't want somebody else having to change that in USAS. These accounts, these payroll accounts are your expenditure accounts when you send that payroll submission file over to USAS, okay? I don't want to assume that people don't know that, okay? I was in your shoes one day. I would have loved for somebody to explain to me a payroll account is an expenditure account that is charged over in USAS land, okay? So this is super important. Now, although this report is great for a summary, this one's even better. When we go and run this, again, I'm just going to keep it as full account. You can, do dealer's choice, fielder's choice on how you want that. If I scroll down to those 500 accounts, bear with me. Check this action. I actually have employee names, so I know who to go change, okay? So even if you give, if you're a much larger district, this is going to be incredibly helpful for you, whereas your treasurer's or your finance department, they may like this one because they don't care about the names. They just care about the account. Hey, then you can come over here and go, oh, there's that account. Oh, I need to go change these 2 people to the new one, which has a special cost center of 9923, okay? You could have them update that sheet for you and give it back to you, or however you want. But hopefully this is super helpful. It's not just something you go look at and go, yep, those are the accounts being charged, okay? Actually use that to your benefit. That's your gross payroll right here. That's your gross payroll. This total is gonna match this total, okay? Again, total accounts charged. All right, hopefully that is helpful for someone, okay? These 2 reports, you don't have to wait until you're clear down here. If this is something you want to initialize, fire those off and make changes now. You go make changes in the dashboard or under core, however you do business, come back in here, modify payroll, you should be good to go, okay? All right, at 10 o'clock, we're going to keep pushing on. Let's assume everything is fabulous in our payroll. I have a test account. Please know my warning, although I told you to do it, will never go away because we don't have our test account synced. So I'm going to go ahead now, and I've balanced. I've got everybody in the pool, and I'm going to post my payroll. Hopefully some of you all are past your biggest payrolls of the year now, and you've all been able to take just a little bit of a sigh in your payroll processing now. All right, so this is now posting everything. So when it posts, it does what? It goes out and it flags those attendance records that they've been added to payroll. It's updated the compensation records. It says one more pay has been paid. It says, here's now the number of days worked included. It's updated the earned amount. It is in the background changed the obligation or the amount due. It has updated the accrue amounts. Like, it's done a lot of jazz, right? And on payroll items, if you're tracking max amounts, it's updated those values, okay? At this point, or before you even do the first payment of a deduction, right? Before you posted your first payroll item, or even if you've created your ACH file and sent it to the bank, but they've not picked it up yet, right? That's the key, right? As long as that bank hasn't picked it up and you can get your ACH file back, you can unpost payroll. And if you're like, dear goodness, that scares the goodness out of me, right? The times that could happen is maybe you have a brand new employee and HR didn't get you the information, right? And you really don't want to make them wait 2 more weeks or maybe 2.5 more weeks before a pay. You could always unpost your payroll, get them added, and do your payroll again. Now, you do have the option of running a special pay, okay? So I'm not saying that. The transportation department, let's say they've contacted you and said, I had a whole stack of timesheets I forgot to give you. Well, I don't know what your district policy is, but typically if it's a district fault, then you make that up. You could unpost your payroll and do that, okay? So those are all times that you can do that. Let's say you've already processed payments and done your email notices. That's okay. That's okay. You can always go back in, cancel your email notice job, right, which we're going to talk about where that sits. And when you unpost a payroll, it undoes all of those payment number assignments. So, you know, when you do process payment, it assigns the direct deposit, the check numbers, and that it undoes those. Okay, so when you unpost a payroll. All right, so let's go ahead. Our next step is going to be processing our payments. Okay, remember I had a check, so I'm going to do checks, XML. Okay, you can do whatever sorting you like. You don't have to enter a starting check number. Okay, it will automatically come in. You'll notice if you hover over long enough some of these fields, it will give you tooltips. This says leave it blank for the next one. I'm going to go ahead and process my payment. Okay, my XMLs go to my downloads. I would then move that into my payroll software and my printing software and print that check. Okay, then we can go right into direct deposits, and depending on your district, if you upload them into a third-party vendor like SCView, I believe it has to be XML, and you also choose print all direct deposits, because basically it's printing a stub for you to upload, okay? And then you would process those payments, okay? Or you can come in and do direct deposits, PDF, and uncheck this, and it will generate those, okay? Once you're done in this window, you can just click on done. The next piece is email notices. Let's talk about this for a moment, okay? Email notices automatically picks everybody that was in that payroll, okay? So what you can do is we suggest you click on the calendar, okay, because it doesn't like manual entry in there. Choose your time first for when you want to send those notices. Okay, let's say 6 a.m. Okay, and then you can select the date. Of course, I'm like way off kilter here with my date. I'll just choose that. And then the bank account that it's coming from, the direct deposit form that you're using, and then you would schedule these notices. Okay, my demo account does not schedule, like I won't see it in Job Scheduler, but that's how you would do that. Okay, all right, let's show you this first, and I'm going to circle back to something that I absolutely forgot to tell you about. We're going to go to Utilities and Job Scheduler. This is where you're going to see your email notices scheduled, okay? You're only going to be able to see yours and the SSDTs, okay? So if you have a couple people in your payroll department, you're not going to be able to see theirs. Also, you can't cancel theirs in a case in which you needed to, or you've accidentally set up the wrong date, or you needed to unpost your payroll, okay? So this is where you would find this information, is under Utilities and Job Scheduler, right? So something that I negated to share at the beginning of this was dates upon payroll. So again, remember my pay date was April, okay? So what is important about that? Let's talk about posting periods, okay? Because if you've not gotten your head wrapped around it, now again, this is USPS, okay? USPS has a lot bigger implication than USPS does. The period must be open to initialize payroll, okay? Period must be open to initialize payroll. Add your attendance records, do all of that kind of jazz. The period must be open and current when you post, okay? So open to initialize a payroll, open and current to post. And my apologies, I forgot to mention that when we first did that back on dates. But again, open periods and then open and current, okay? There are month-end checklists and of course a quarter-end checklist. If you don't have the month-end checklist, let's grab that for you right now, because that then tells you how to close a previous month. Now, I will tell you, we do have several districts that always leave the month before open. So they're almost closing that month 2 months behind. And the reason being is if you're using the core adjustments area and let's say you needed to include a date range that is in a posting period that's closed, it won't let you do it, okay? Or let's say your payroll is like 2 weeks behind. You're doing an April payroll, but you're using March dates, okay? So that's another time if you're using adjustments or anything like that, that you would want to make sure to leave that open. But I'm going to grab that month-end checklist for you. Checklist appendix. And we have several checklists that Meta, I'm going to say bougies up for you. This is not one of them. So if you ever want to be sure of what checklist to use, please reach out to us. But this month-end and quarter-end checklist, I just put it in the chat box, the month-end. That is one that you can use from the SSDTs. It carries enough information that you can use. Okay? All right. Any questions on the payroll process itself? Well, it seems so easy when you cram it into an hour and you don't have phone calls coming in, people in your office, all kinds of stuff going on, right? Any questions before we move into, well, I missed the current piece. You know what? Let's do this. I'm going to unpost my payroll. And I'm going to show you that current because I skipped right past it. See, that wasn't that scary. That's just unposting payroll. Okay, it just undid everything I just did. But I'm doing that to show you current, and my apologies. I almost went right by that. So remember what we said about initialization. Everything moves from future into current, and then contract stuff comes into the current area. Let's go into current. There's all my peeps, okay? If I was to look for Daisy Duck, she would be in here. She was my only future person. There's Daisy right here at the bottom, okay? So in here, we can make changes. I want to make this note specifically because God love her, I worked with someone the other day and she was chasing her tail and didn't know. And she just didn't know because she hadn't experienced it before and she was new to redesign, period. And so if you ever delete something out of current and the source was from future and you don't want them in payroll at all, you have to delete them out of two places. You have to delete it out of current and delete it out of future because it knows its original source, okay? Remember Daisy here. I entered her in future, okay? There's her sub-8 information, so we know for sure I did. If I delete her out of here, well, wait a minute, hold on, let me show you something real quick. If I go to future, nothing there, right? We initialized, everything moved over, okay? I'm always a proof in the pudding type of person here, right? If I delete her out of here, again, just this miscellaneous one on this job, she's not here anymore, but the source was future. I now either can have to make changes over here or I have to delete her out of here, okay, to get rid of her, okay? Now, if I want her back in the pool, again, initialization is what takes it from future to current. Okay, before I initialize again, I want to show you some more stuff in current. Let's say I needed to make a change to a pay account, okay? So remember I was telling you, give those lists to whomever. Let's say you need to make changes. You can actually change it in two spots. For this payroll, you're going to have to change it here and back on their payroll account. But when you come in here, this is kind of elusive if you need to edit or change a payroll account. You'll notice down here, we don't see that payroll account anywhere, do we? Nowhere, okay? You have to click on edit, okay? And then, that's to add one. Wait a minute, where'd my payroll account go? Oh, please. Huh. Maybe I picked an employee that has one of those accounts. Hold on here. I may have done just that. The ones that have an error. Let me do my Garza. It is not there. Oh, this is where to add. My apologies. This is where to add, and you can then also come in and edit that as well. So this is where that's at. You actually have to edit the record in order to see that record. Let me see. I'm going to try something here. This is just me trying something. Nope. Okay. I just want to make sure I was not missing the mark. Okay. And then you can also add another item in here too. Let's say you forgot to do a timesheet to somebody, but you don't want to go back into future and add it. You can add it right here in current. Okay. And then go up and save that record. Okay. Delete that out of there. All right. All right. So we're going to go back into our payroll. We are going to click on just modify payroll, and I'm just going to do that pay group. Remember what group she was in. My apologies. I'm going to do that pay group. When that updates, it's going to move my future item that I changed back over. It's going to correct anything that I did in current. It's going to update all of that information, and then I can repost. Now, when you post, it saves all of those reports with all of those changes. So typically when you make changes, you want to go run your pay report at a minimum, make sure your totals balance up, and then you should be good to go. All right. So any questions, again, on the payroll process? Future, current, initialization, making changes. No? All right. I'm going to go ahead and post that. All right. So one of the other items that it is updating is what? It is pushing all of my payroll items, all of my liabilities to be paid out into the outstanding payables area, okay? So those are what we call like post-payroll processes. So let's go out into our processing area. So if there are no questions on payroll, I'm going to move right into outstanding payables and processing outstanding payables. So I know we have some veteran folks on here as well. Hopefully, when you first start doing this in redesign, it can be a little overwhelming. But hopefully, for our veteran folks that have been on, the longer you've been on, the more you've been able to find the flexibility that is really nice in here, so that those features that we have. But basically, this outstanding payables area is employees. Okay, we only pay employee amounts out of here. Even though we may see employer amounts here, those do not get paid out of here. Okay, for example, see my Cogdell signs here has an employee amount of $50, an employer amount of $1,200. Okay, if I choose this one to say like it's balanced, I'm ready to pay it, which we're going to go through those steps. Notice the amount that shows up is only the employee amount, okay? Only the employer amount, excuse me, employee amount, okay? We don't pay any employer information out of here. Okay, if I want to bring that item back, I just click on it to bring it back. All right, so let's talk about this as a whole. In this area, you have all kinds of options, okay? You can choose by pay cycle. So this was my second pay of the month. So I might want to do every pay and my monthly one, okay? So if you were on our first pay, our first or second training, it might have been second training, we talked about where these flags are at, okay? These payroll cycles are tied to the payroll item, and that can be found under core and configuration. Basically, these are buckets that we've put these deduction codes in, these payroll item codes, okay? Now, I'm also, currently, we all are at the end of September, so you might be pulling in quarterly ones. Some of you may just say, I want them in all together. And then we have other people that say, nope, I'm doing it one at a time because I can, right? You do you. Whatever and however is most manageable for you, you have the flexibility to do so, okay? Whatever you choose here is going to show up on your payables report, okay? But you also have more options when you get in there. So hang tight with me. We're gonna go through these tabs next. You'll notice in this first tab, it kind of is very streamlined, right? Here's my payee name, the amount, the count, and whether it's electronic or not electronic payment. The second tab every tab you go across gives you a little bit more detail. The payroll instructions or checklist that we provided you all, it has recommended that the second tab, and here's why. Because we get the use of the code, right? A lot of times this code can be incredibly helpful for us when seeking things out, okay? You'll notice that the code was added to this, the configuration type, which tells you what type of payroll item it is, okay? And then, again, your amounts, your counts, and payment type. If we go one further, okay, it shows us a little bit more information as far as the employee information, first and last name, and the position if it was tied to one, okay? This one is super helpful, especially when you may be doing error adjustments, which good news, I've not even got to share this with our team yet. I was on a prioritization call yesterday. There is a release coming out that is going to have its own section, its own user interface to show error adjustments only. Yay! Okay, so ones that you've already done, ones that you have currently sitting there, because if any of you have done payroll before, you know you had to go into the employee's payroll item, and if you've paid it already, it disappeared, right? There wasn't really a great history of that. That user interface is coming. Very excited to share that with you today. That is soon. There's some very cool enhancements coming out that we're very excited to share with you. Okay, so that said, you can come in here and let's say you had an error adjustment where you could look for that negative if you were given money back. This gives great detail. This is almost like looking at a report without running a report, okay? So let's say I wanted to look at just my 603. Okay, I can filter by just my 603 code. My demo doesn't. I've worked with districts that does. I'm looking at 603. Here's all of my employees that are in my 603, right? Here's the pay dates. I have 415s in there and my 430s, right? So it's a combination. Maybe this is one I pay monthly or quarterly, okay? If it was like city taxes and it was quarterly, you'd see, if you're semi-monthly, 6 pay dates in there, okay? Maybe a special pay, right? That would be in here. You're going to see special pays in here. You're going to see regular pays in here, and you're going to see payables adjustments in here. We're going to talk about that next. I was speaking to a district, I think it was last week or the week before, and we were talking about what's the best reports to look at when looking at totals, like when they do transfers of money, okay? So they have somebody that goes to the bank and does their transfers for them, right? Transfers to the IRS, transfers to retirements, transfers to whatever companies you're using, right? Electronically moving that money. And as we were talking through it, this is the area you want to look at the end of the day, okay? Because that's what's payable to those vendors, to those companies, those payees, right? If you were just pulling and looking at the payroll reports, generated reports like the payroll item report or the payroll item detail report, that just relates to that payroll, right? Even if I had a first payroll of the month and a second payroll of the month, I could have had a special pay in between. I could have done an error adjustment. I could have done a void and reissue. Is that those payroll accounts going to support that? No, they're not. If I did a refund, right, of a payroll item, okay, outside of a payroll. So all of this in this area is going to capture those changes, okay? So this is the area. The reports from this area are the ones that you ultimately want to use for when you're doing your payments or your transfers, okay? Those reports from payroll, special pays, regular pays, refunds, void and reissues, all of that are just supporting documentation to what's in here, okay? So hopefully that aids in the breadcrumb trail. Now, let's talk about Aflac sent us $50 back, right? Because somebody forgot to tell us they stopped their account. We had already paid them, obviously, because they sent us a check back. So we did the error adjustment to the employee. Well, we don't want to short that payment to the company for this next pay, right? Because they already gave us the money back. How do we handle that? Okay, so I'm going to pick on, well, it's not a negative amount, but I'm really not seeing, oh, there's some negatives. Oh, winner, winner. Okay, so you'll notice my Daisy Duck on her 500 has a negative amount, okay? That could have been an error adjustment back to the employee, but I do not want to short the check to them, okay, by that $99, okay? So what I can do is I'm going to go offset that. So I'm going to go up here into my payables adjustment. I'm going to see, I could correct this one too, but I'm going to do a correction. I'm going to do create. I'm going to choose Daisy. It was on her 500 payroll item. Okay, the employee amount, I'm going to do a positive because that was a negative. So I'm going to net to zero. So $99, and I'm going to do correction. Do not short payment. Okay, and I'm going to click on save. I'm going to see it in my grid behind, but let's go back here. Go back into my detail, because remember, I can see a lot of stuff. If I go to Daisy, okay, I can pull Daisy. There's my 500. There's my 2 negatives. Here's my positive right down here. Okay, remember, I can't sort, so I'm sorry about that. But so now, when I go to move that over for payment, that would net to zero. So it's not going to short the check to the payment or to the company. Okay? Right? So that's a description of the tab going across the top. Let's come back into our pay cycles and actually how we're going to pay these. All right? So again, you have options based on the payroll that you're either doing an every pay, monthly or quarterly, or all together. For this example today, I'm just going to do every payroll. Okay? And I'm going to stay on my second tab because that gives me just enough information. Okay? And I don't know why that came back over, but we're going to choose it again. Okay. Now I'm going to go run my payables report. So step 1 is choosing how you're going to filter this and running your payables report. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and run that report. Now you'll notice within here, I have more options. Okay. If I bring them all in, that's great. It's going to give me balances for just that time. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to leave it alone. I'm going to show you how to do that. If I choose page break, because I want them between each one, because maybe I'm using these as remittance reports to these companies, right? Maybe they want a copy of who, what, when, and where, okay? If I hover over this area, this one does not give a tooltip to leave it blank, okay? If you leave this blank, it will pull everything from the grid before, okay? So you don't have to manually select it, but you can, okay? I'm going to go ahead and do it just to show you how that works. Or I can do every payroll and do an additional filter to just see maybe Medicare if I wanted. But for this example, I'm going to do all. Let's talk about the difference between full report and summary report. Full report is going to give me details. It's going to give me not only the payroll item, but all the people that paid into it and how much they paid into it. When I do the summary, it's just basically going to give me all the payroll item codes and the grand total. That's it. Okay, so let's look at both. Okay, this again is the full report. So you notice that I have got all my employees listed out individually, the amounts that were paid in by each, okay, for each. Okay, I go to bottom. Again, it's subtotals by each. Sorry, I didn't mean to drive through that so quickly. Okay, that is just a subtotal for each. Again, we really don't want total overall here because we really wouldn't want to, total all of these together because it's kind of a moot point. but it does give subtotals by payroll item. Then when we do the summary report, again, it's going to just give us the meat and potatoes, the code, the name, the amount, and this one does actually give grand totals for all together. So maybe, okay, so maybe you are this district that you're like, you know what, I only want to see my annuities right now. And maybe they're all coded with the 5s. You know where I'm getting at? If I did this, I don't think I had anything in those, come to think of it. Nope, I didn't. You'll notice that it wasn't in every payroll. I don't have those 500s in here, so that's why I couldn't do that. But if I break this, and now look at the summary, now I get data, and I only had one. That's all right. At least you see the example that it shows. All right. So again, there's filtering, and then there's additional filtering. So that's where you get full details, and that's where you get a summary report. Okay. Now, second step is balancing, right? One word, but usually that's the one that takes the longest, right? So you balance, okay? Here's where you have step 3 is a lot of options, and that's moving them over for payment, right? Readying them for payment. So let's say you went in and you looked at all these and you've got them all balanced. You say, yep, these are all good to go. Everything I have showing in the grid right now. You could select them all. So again, you're selecting here and it's moving them all over. Again, notice, we do not pay any employer amounts, only employee amounts, okay? Or you can come in and go, you know what? I only need my federal, state, and my Medicare right now. Everything else, who cares, right? You can do them individually, and then you can post them individually if you want. Or you can, when you're done balancing, you can come in here and go, yep, that one's balanced. Okay, yep, nope, that one's balanced. Nope, yep, that one's balanced. Again, you do you, okay? You can even come in and choose to do all of your electronic payments first if you wanted to. Select them, brings the total, and then you post them. So let's show that example, okay? So I'm going to choose just my state one, okay? Because it's right now the only one flagged electronic. Again, so pop quiz. Love pop quizzes. Where's the source of this electronic payment come from? If I needed to change this, if somebody's false and they need to make an electronic payment, where would I go and change this? Does anybody remember from the trainings we've had before? You can unmute yourself or put it in chat. This is me checking to see if anybody's paying attention. Yes, Corinne, yes. Yes, under both of you ladies, great, yes. It is under core, under payroll item, it's configuration, but Corinne was maintenance, she's got it right. That's where we do maintenance. It's in the configuration, both ladies. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Anything that has to do with the company, right? Because the company name, the payee name is, I did get that wrong. That's my fault. It's under payee under core. Oh my gosh, I almost jacked myself up. Angie and Lori are like, yeah, Heidi. It's if you're changing anything else on the payroll item. But the source, which is payee name, is where you're going to change that. I'm still going to give both ladies credit because they were both willing to put themselves out there. So thank you very much. See, Heidi got super giddy about that. So yes, the company or the payee is what determines the payee name. All right, good deal. So see, even we get blundered. All right, so let's go ahead and make this payment. So again, step 3 is readying them for payment. So moving them from the left to the right. Step 4 is actually posting that payment. Okay, so you have a choice. You can do per payee, which basically is going to lump them all together. Let's say you do group deductions. You have like 10 of them and they're all paid to American Fidelity. That's basically what per payee means. It means on the payroll item configuration, which was what Chrissy and Corinne were talking to, that payee is assigned to all of those. So that means it's going to look back to that same payee and issue one payment for all 10, okay? Or there's the payee item config, and that means break it out by payroll item code, right? So that means there'd be 10 payments if we did that for that American Fidelity example. This one only has one, so we're going to go ahead and post that. We're going to give it an issue date. Mine has to be for the period that I'm in. So I'm going to do 04/30/2021. Okay, I'm going to leave it as XML. Here's curious. So even the system knows, even though this is an electronic payment, if I were, it defaults to XML. If I were choosing one that was not electronic and I left it as XML, it knows better. It knows not to create an XML file for that, okay? I'm gonna leave my starting check number and I'm gonna post that, okay? So that is going to do a report for you that's gonna show you exactly, here's the number, payment number was assigned, when it was issued, who it's payable to, the code, again, the details of it, and then the amount, okay? So if you track that for your transfers, maybe somebody's doing your electronic transfers and you track that number, you can use that report. So we just kicked that out of the pool, okay? Let me change this to false. Oopsie, false. That's going to bring back in everybody else, okay? Let me choose some random ones here, okay? We've already balanced them. We're going to post. Again, I'm going to change my date. Again, these were false to electronic, but I'm going to leave it as XML. It's going to know the difference when I post this. Again, it's going to give me a nice report of here's my payment numbers, the amounts. Now, this is nice if you wanted to use this when you go into actually print these checks, okay? So we're going to go ahead and close this window, minimize it. And then we need to do what? We need to go in to our payments. And so this is step 5. We need to go into our payments and we need to actually cut the checks, okay? So we're going to go into payments. We're going to go to payee, okay? Remember from training, payee is our deduction company. So we're going to go right into that area. And then we're going to go to the second tab in called payee payment checks, okay? Now my most recent ones are going to pop to the top, so that's great. So I see my payment and I made note of it. It's 008009 and 10. I'm going to go ahead and choose those. And then I'm going to click on print checks. It defaults to XML. I can give it a name if I want and process that payment. When I process that payment, it's going to create me an XML file that I would load into my print software and print those checks. Now, let's talk about this. What if you needed to void one? What if you needed to void one because you realized I forgot to offset that adjustment? Remember, I was talking about that adjustment for Daisy Duck, okay? Let's assume you forgot to do that and you realized it now. No problem, okay? You can go back in to whichever one it was, okay? You are then going to go back to, you have to choose a different tab. You're going to go back to payee payments, okay? You're going to find that payment number. Oops, I need to make note of the payment number. Excuse me, one moment. 746. Okay, we're going to choose this one, and we're going to void. When we void it, it puts it right back in outstanding payables for us again. That is so nice, okay? It's so nice. So I'm going to void that. I'm going to give it the same date as my issue date because that just makes for a nice, clean audit. Okay, now if I go back into see my 746, it didn't have payroll items not touched. We're going to go into processing. And if I go here and I do every pay, believe it was that 590, that Seal Motors, okay? Then I could go make changes in my payables adjustment. Let's find somebody, see if she has a 590. Oh, she does. Okay, I would do an adjustment, save it. Once I get that saved, if I come back in here, then it's going to change that total for me, okay? And then I can redo it, okay, and post it again. Okay. All right, do you have a comment in the box? Did the payables payment report recently change? I think so. SSDT is telling me no. So I'll circle back to that. Or am I hitting a wrong button? It's different in my past few pay dates. Here is what I've noticed. I actually had a district up north that contacted us and said something's changed. I provided a lot of information to the SSDT. They said nothing had changed. So I don't know if something in a hot fix, but here's what I've been telling districts, because you didn't used to have to choose your items, right? Because now you're seeing different totals come in. Is that right, Lori? Are you seeing sometimes when you've already paid come in on those reports? Not sure if Lori's still on or not, but that's what we were seeing. We had a district that was not having to come in here and choose the payroll items again. They were running it, and for some reason it was bringing in totals that they had already posted out of there. It's just on different formatting showing subtotals instead of listing. Oh, so there is a change to the report view. Yes, there is a change to the report view. You noticed when we did the summary, let me just pick on this one. I think I may have already paid that one, so let's try something different.
No.
There is a different view, and that was a highlight. That's the payables report. Did I not get this? Okay. So there was an enhancement to the view and look of this. So yes, that's correct. Yeah. Okay, good. Yep. Yeah, and the reason it's more pages is because they added all this bouginess to it. So that's why. Yep, good question. All right. You're very welcome. Absolutely. All right. Any questions on the payroll process or outstanding payables? Because this is great. This gives us about 15 minutes or so time for question and answers if you have.
Heidi, you want to show them how to resequence or to take a direct deposit and change it to a check?
I can. Yeah. I can.
For payee,
I didn't
or
have
payroll.
Right. I didn't have any of those prepared, Ange, but I can go try to find one to do. Does anybody have a question on the? No, that's okay. I can definitely do that. Payroll process or outstanding payables? We actually, Ange, on that, we actually did cover that back on last week's training because we covered the payments area. Yeah,
Okay,
we covered the payments
area. I just want to make sure it's in one of the recordings.
Yep. So, yeah, so last week, so again, we're getting that second series out there for you under payments. If you needed to do a resequence to one, basically you are taking, let me see, I voided that one. That one's a paid one. Hang on here, let me grab some notes on that. Let's do 901-009, and it is 145. Let me see if I can do this one. If I do this and resequence bank accounts, yes, my starting check number, the original one, the check is 9010. Whoops, me fat fingered, sorry about that. If you're only doing one, you just enter the original one in twice. And then you would need to add, it doesn't automatically see the next one available. So you'll notice in the grid behind, the next one available is 901011. So you'd add that. And then it's saying, do you want to void the old check? Okay. So, I mean, that is completely up to you. We're going to go into payments, payee, resequence. And the option to void all checks is at the same time they are being resequenced. If left unchecked, the bad check will not be voided. I can't think of a situation where you would want to leave that. So I'm going to actually void the old check. You can give it a void date then. Ours was from payroll today, so we're going to do that. You can validate it. Gives you an option to validate it first. So it's going to tell you, hey, here's the old number, here's the new number. Right here, okay? And then you can post that. And then once you've posted that, you can go grab that new check, okay? The one that ends in 11, and you can print that one. Okay, so there's my new one up here, and there's the one I voided. Okay, there are steps out there as well when you need to, let me go back to the main payments one, if you needed to reissue. So let me go down to reissue. Where's my index? Don't know where my index went. That's interesting. My index went away. That's all right. We'll go here. And then when you do a reissue, this you can do a void and reissue, or you can reissue a direct deposit as a check if needed. So let me grab this link and put this out for everyone in case you'd like to do that. So that is a reissue. Those don't happen very often where you might need to take that direct deposit and do that. And then again, last week's training also covers manual in case you have those situations. Got a question. Can you show a doc into future? Absolutely, we can. So let's go into payroll and future. Okay, and I'm going to go choose an employee. Let's see, I have some that I can pick on, in fact. Okay, so again, I'm going to use my drop down. There's the L's for legacy. Okay, so these are old ones, but I'm going to do it off of the new one. That's funny. It happens to be a superintendent getting a doc. Okay, so we're going to do test doc. Okay, and then when you do the doc, you're going to come in and do doc. Now, you do not need to put in a negative amount. That doc knows in the system in the background that whatever amount you put in is going to be deducted. It's going to be a doc. Okay, so I'm just going to put in for this example 1, and maybe it's at 1 daily rate. Okay, so this is their daily rate. Or I can override that. Maybe we're going to do a doc of something else. Or if I change it to 2, maybe 2 days. Okay, notice the gross changed. Okay, if I do 1 and tab out, notice my gross amount changed. It's going to tell you exactly how much is going to be docked. Okay, retirement hours, is it supplemental? There's my pay group, and save. Okay, so that's how you would enter that into future. So Lori has a statement. We often do dock for trips where a driver docks out of their contracted obligation but takes another job. Yep, where retirement isn't charged. When you dock, it won't allow me to mark for retirement, correct? If that makes sense. Okay, yeah, we may have to look at your specific situation and how to handle that. When you dock, it won't allow me to not mark for retirement. So you're not wanting to, let's see if you're docking them. Yeah, we may have to talk specific district situation as to why retirement wouldn't be impacted on an earnings. So yeah, Lori, you may need to send us a case on that one. Yeah, you don't, oh, you're talking retirement hours. Well, technically you are. Technically you are docking their hours, but you can give them hours with their trips. Do you see what I'm saying? Like you really kind of need to rob Peter to pay Paul. If you're docking their daily hours, yeah, right. So that's what you should be doing. You should be docking their contracted hours, but giving them hours when it comes to the trip. You see what I'm saying? So they kind of offset each other. Auditably, that's probably the way that should be happening. Okay, good deal, good deal. Is there a way to set up future docs? Abso-flippin'-lutely. Yay, whoever asked that. Kathy Evans, thank you. That's where this effective date comes in, okay? So this pay, now my next one on my test would be a May one. So I could leave this one open. But let's say you need to dock, I don't know, maternity leave, that kind of stuff. Maybe you're not docking them all at once, right? You're kind of giving them some grace over a 6-month period for maternity leave, disability, what have you, right? Come in here, use that effective date. So let's say your date ranges are always the 1st through the 15th and the 16th or the 30th. Obviously, I'm taking the easy path on that. As long as, so my next pay in here would be the May 15th one, but let's talk about my May 30th pay. My May 30th pay, 31st, excuse me, is going to be the 16th through the 31st. As long as I include a day in that date range, I can schedule them out. So I could come in here and put 0516 2021, save it. Okay. Then I know I'm working on another one for this one as a doc situation. Okay. I'm going to do doc 2. Okay. And this one would be the first one in June. So that would be the 1st through the 15th. So 0601, 2021. Okay. Now, let me close this. You'll notice out here, let's see, is my dates in here? Where's my effective dates? Let me drag this bad boy over here. Okay. When I run payrolls now, remember our start and stop dates look at a lot of things. This is one of them. It looks at this effective date. So when I go doing my last pay in May and it sees the 16th through the 31st, it's only going to pull in this one and not this one. You can schedule supplementals, Kathy. You can, oh my gosh, think about all the supplementals you do in the spring, right? For academic, right? I don't know if you pay them mid-year, end of year, but you could totally start scheduling all these out as the board approves them. And let's say somebody doesn't complete one, okay, come in here and kick them out of the pool, right? No harm, no foul. Right, did that help, Kathy? She's one of my lovely ones with a video, so thank you. You can see her. Any other questions? These are great questions. We love being able to show ways to do things. Okay, let me make sure I've covered everything that we wanted to. I think so, as far as tips and tricks. It's your pay period, Corinne, not necessarily your pay date. It's your pay period, right? Because we say it that way because everybody does something different, right? Some folks that are semi-monthly, their pay date may be the 30th of the month, but their ending date is also the 30th of the month. Okay, but some people have a pay date like on the 30th, but their pay period is the 1st through the 15th, right? So it's your pay period. You're very welcome. Beginning and ending date ranges. Yep. All right. Any other questions, comments, anything for the good of the cause, team? Any tips, tricks? No? I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.